Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us here on whatever platform you may be watching us on, whether that's on the app or online or any streaming platform. Thanks for joining us here. We have Sydney Hood live in Augusta right now as jury deliberations have begun in the murder trial of Leon and Tanya Tripp, who are both charged in the death of their daughter, 16-year-old Janelle Carwell, Leon being her stepfather to be exact. But there was a bit of a holdup this afternoon, Sydney, right before those jury deliberations were set to begin. Talk to me about where things stand today and the decision that these jurors have to make this afternoon.
Well, all morning, Kayla, the jury heard each side give their final arguments to them, and the jury heard three different sides of this case, starting with the prosecutors. They really urged the jury to pay attention to the evidence and to look at this case as Leon and Tanya Tripp working together as, quote, parties to a crime. That was a phrase that was thrown around multiple times during closing and opening arguments whenever this trial first started. And Leon Tripp's defense attorney really urged the jury that he did not do anything in this case. She really started her closing arguments trying to paint a picture of who she says Leon Tripp is to the jury, saying that he did not murder anyone, that he was just a dad who was trying to provide for his family. And then Tanya Tripp's attorney, on the other hand, told the jury that she is, quote, a victim of love, lies, and Leon. That was a phrase that he threw around a lot during his opening arguments and today in his closing arguments as well. He told the jury that Tanya fell victim to love and not logic. So again, like I said, the jury hearing three different sides to this case. Closing arguments took up the entire morning and into the early afternoon as well. And like you mentioned, the jury just now going back for deliberations after hearing instructions from Judge Lyons. So again, we have been inside the courtroom throughout the entirety of this trial. It's going on for about 2 weeks at this point. It took them 2.5 days just to find a jury. And ever since then, we've heard about 25 witnesses from the state and the defense. They did not call Leon Tripp or Tanya Tripp to the stand to testify, and they didn't call any more witnesses. So that is why the cases rested so fast yesterday, and that's what brings us here today. But it's been just getting a feel from inside the courtroom, from the amount of people who have come to watch this trial. I'm getting a very emotional vibe from people, especially today as it's coming to a close. I was talking with some people during our lunch break earlier today, and I was just asking them what they were doing here, if they had any personal connections, and a lot of them told me no, that they either searched for Janelle whenever she was first reported missing in 2017, or a couple of them, they are Josie High School alums, and they wanted to come here to support Janelle. She was a sophomore at TW Josie whenever she first went missing in 2017. And then, like I said, a lot of people are just here because they said that they showed up for her when she was first reported missing nearly 9 years ago, and they want to show up for her now.
Yes, Sydney, and you do mention that it did take 2.5 days to sort of set that jury, and we know that there's a very important decision. We don't know how long they're going to be deliberating. Could take days, hours, could be minutes, but we are keeping an eye on that, and we know you'll have the latest for us. But in terms of the jury, taking 2.5 days to get that jury set, talk to me a little bit about the exposure of this story in those earlier days when Janelle first went missing, and why this was such a difficult task for the court.
Yeah, a lot of the questions that they asked to potential jurors during the early days of this trial was if anyone had any prior knowledge of Janelle, of Leon Tripp, of Tanya Tripp, because again, this has been going on for almost a decade. Like I said, Janelle was first reported missing in April of 2017, and her remains were not found until 11 months later in March of 2018. And we talk about this case being high interest for this community community on day one of this trial, day one of jury selection. There were two courtrooms. One was an overflow for people who came here to listen in and take part of this trial. So again, that just goes to show you how several people in this community have not forgotten about Janelle. And like I said, several people today told me that they showed up for her back in 2017 whenever they were searching for her, and they wanted to show up for her now. But that was really a challenge for both prosecutors and defense attorneys, Kayla, is that they wanted to find a fair and impartial jury, and that meant finding people who did not have any prior knowledge of this, any prior opinions or biases of this case. So that again is why it took 2.5 days to get that 12-person jury plus 3 alternates. And then on the first day of testimony for this trial, one juror had to be dismissed because it was reported to the court that that juror was talking about this case to other potential jurors. So that just brought it down to 2 alternates on the jury. So that again just goes to show you how long this story has been weaved in the Augusta community, how when people hear Janelle Carwell's name that they immediately go back to those moments in 2017 when she was first reported missing, all of the searches that people in the community did for her, all of the prayer vigils that they did for her. That was brought back to the attention of the jury throughout the testimony. We heard from several people who took part in those searches, who led those searches, as they took the stand to testify about what they remember and what they wanted the jury to know about those moments. And also we heard from a handful of forensic experts, from forensic digital forensics to anthropologists in this. And the reason that we heard from so many of those experts is a challenge with this case that the prosecutors were very transparent with the jury about is a lot of time passed between the time Janelle was reported missing to the time that her remains were found. Again, 11 months had passed. So when they did ultimately find her remains, there was nothing there but bones and a sports bra. They said they showed body camera video from the day her remains were found by a homeowner on Golden Camp Road, and the jury got to see a look at what they were finding, what they were uncovering, and what ultimately led them to identifying those remains as Janelle Carwell. So a lot of testimony the jury has had to hear, like I said, over the last week and a half, and they've just gone back for deliberations. They have a very important decision to make here. 4 charges that both Leon Tripp and Tanya Tripp face. They are charged with malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, family violence, and concealing death of another. Again, we don't know how long it's going to take them or how short it's going to take them, but our camera is set up, ready to go once a decision is ultimately made.
All right, thank you so much for following this, Sydney. We know you've been in and out of that courtroom for the last 2 weeks following this trial from beginning to end. And, you know, we're waiting on that verdict. We don't know when it's going to come, but obviously a very high public interest story with lots of high emotion surrounding this. So we know lots of people are very eager to see what the jury does decide based off of all the evidence that was presented. So thank you for breaking it all down for us. We do have a newscast here in just under 2 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and let you go so that way you don't miss when that jury gets back into that courtroom. But thank you so much for your coverage on this, Sydney. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. We do have News 12 at 4 o'clock starting here in just about 2 minutes. We'll continue following the story on air and online. And just as you heard from Sydney, she'll be there until the end of this. Thanks for joining us.